face. Hope everybody's doing well, things going well. And with that, we're gonna get started with the meeting.
Motion to approve the October 5th agenda.
Really? My second.
I'll second.
Gary. Minutes for the 14th.
You vote on those.
You need it. I'm gonna do both on the same time.
I'll motion to approve the minutes of the September 14th meeting.
Second.
Second.
Get Larry, okay. All in favor of October 5th and September 14th minutes approved. All in favor? All opposed? Unanimous. Discussion items, Jones County School Improvement.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, our school principal are here to present their school improvement for all students. So we will begin.
Comfort Elementary, Ms. Ella Downs.
Good evening. I've given you the school goals and just a little extra information there that you can peruse if you would like. They're very simplistic and very similar to what they have been for the last few years because we've not had a full school year in the 3 years I've been at Comfort. So we want 70% of our students at Comfort in all grade levels to be proficient as measured by state end of year assessments of various kinds. We want 40% of our students with disabilities at Comfort to show proficiency on those same tests. And we also are working to create a culture in which academic, social, and emotional needs are met, and 70% of our students hoping to see improvement in those same state assessments and also in what's known as the DESA social and emotional screener. And we would like to be able to achieve these things by June of 2021. Any questions?
Discussions? Thank you.
Mayswell Elementary will be up next, Ms. Mandy Gillis. We'll turn to that.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So you also have copies, just like I found set up there at the front with you. No need to reiterate what she said. They also are very similar to what you might recall from last year, and that was to continue to focus on the overall proficiency for our students in both reading and math, with the note of an instructional delivery change, obviously by being remote for most of our students. At some portion during the week or completely. So the instructional format has changed as well as the assessment format. We've moved to the online testing. So our teachers, again, were a little too afraid to move away from focusing on those goals or increasing the proficiency until we can kind of figure out what it's all going to look like this year. So you'll see that those goals are very similar, and the first one being in math, the second goal being in reading. Our third goal was to, though we do not have a designated subgroup of our exceptional children, because the number is so small, we still wanted to continue to focus on their proficiency and their inclusion, their growth in their reports. So we're focusing on that. And we added a fourth goal in there this year to maintain communication with our families. A single way. Right now we haven't figured out which one works best. I think for me personally, Class Dojo does. So we wanted to kind of focus on maintaining communication with our families, keeping that everything open to them. So those are our goals for this year. We're going to continue to focus on making it the best school around.
Any questions for Ms. Gillis? All right. Now, Pottsville Elementary, Stephen Howard.
Good evening. Our first goal in Collinsville is between now and June 2021. We worked to increase our overall composite on the ready assessments for reading and math from 61 to 70%. Our second goal looks at our early literacy in grades K through 3 with a performance composite going from 63 to 68. And then our third goal works on our targeted subgroup of our Black students to narrow the opportunity gap by 10%.
Any questions for Mr. Howard? If not, next up is Trenton Elementary, Ms. Holly Ball.
Good evening.
my school improvement, team, we looked at our goals, decided that, we wanted to maintain the goals that we had, last year. Due to COVID, we weren't able to see if we met them or not. So our goals for this year will be, 70% of our students in grades 3 through 6 will be proficient in reading and math integrated assessments. 75% of students in grade 5 will be proficient in the science integrated assessment. We are hopeful that we will maintain our exceeded growth status this year. And for this year, we want to decrease our achievement gap of our EC population by increasing our EC subgroup proficiency from 42% to 50%. And if we do this, then this will hopefully allow us to be a B school this coming up year.
Any questions from Ms. Ball? All right. And last, we have German Senior High School, Mr. Todd Moore.
Good evening, everyone. We have, our school improvement team has 4 goals. First was our academic goal, and we basically kept the same academic goals that we had last year since COVID kind of kept us from being able to really track that with our EOG and EFC scores. So by the end of each school year through 2022-23 school year, Jones Senior High School will increase EOC and EOG scores by at least 5 percentage points each year. Then we added 3 new goals. One was a school climate and culture goal. By the end of the 2021-22 school year, Jones Senior High School will create and implement a monthly staff and/or student activity in order to facilitate a more positive and productive school climate culture as measured by school surveys, teacher working condition survey, parents, students, and teachers. There's obviously a lot of different breakdown points underneath each of these, which I've shared with you, and our committee members in each of the goals, which I've also shared with you. And then we have a social emotional learning goal. By the end of the 2021-22 school year, Jones Senior High School will demonstrate self-awareness and self-management skills as evidenced by a minimum of 20% decrease in the number of discipline referrals. We're certainly hopeful that discipline referrals will go down at our school this year. And then our last goal was a parent involvement goal. And so by the end of this school year, Jones Senior High School established a Community and Parent Advisory Council, CPAC, with at least 2 parents per grade level and a minimum of 5 community events to increase parent and community involvement. Again, kind of sub-goals underneath each of the goals are broken down.
Any questions for Mr. Morgan?
All right, thank y'all, principals, y'all free to.
Meeting at this time.
Draw numbers and see who's gonna get out of the parking lot. When you're ready.
I'm not principal here. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
good night.
Bryce, if you got any secrets about community involvement, I know you did a good job involving Maple. I'm sure you're helping her, but that,
We've looked at the admission policy that was mentioned in the last meeting about charging students who are transferring into the district. And we've looked at some other districts' policies. And so this is where we're at with that thinking. We get the funding for the state and federal portions that would be allotted to us for students. The portion that we don't receive would be local funding for the students come to us from policy. And so the thinking we have at the moment would be if people want to transfer into the district, charge them that local PTA amount as the fee to transfer to Jones County schools. Right now, it's around $385 to $400 per student. We were thinking about a $500 fee for transfers, which would be quite a bit cheaper than any district that's around us.
We only spend, the county only puts $400 and some in each student. I don't know, $700 at least. I mean, that sounds awfully low. I mean, I'm not,
We can look at it, David and I would look at it.
that sounds, I mean, really, it sounds awfully low.
We'll look at it and see, verify.
But, so anyhow, is that, it's, you know, if we go and work and draft out a policy along that line, would that be acceptable? Any other ideas that you have? If we determine what that PPA amount is.
Yeah, I would have thought it was a lot more than that. I thought it was around $800 years ago. I mean, but I don't know.
Now with the agreement, I mean, the local appropriation has gone down to what we normally would have at this time because of the new school and are dropping it again, so.
So we can't match up with other counties dollar for dollar, what they charge and what we.
Well, I mean, we could charge $2,000 for it.
Well, but it's $500 is awful cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's 500, I mean, if it's close to $500, I think we ought to charge at least $750. I mean, that's just me.
Well, like I say, if the
Because
other county.
we're having to deal with, you know, we're dealing with all.
You know, you got some 2,200, some what, 1,000, 1,500, so several people would be out of the way.
You know what? It's $750 or $1,000 because we're giving them a babysitting service and putting their teachers at risk, as well as other students, because they're coming from out of county. And these other counties are a whole lot bigger, and they got a whole lot more, you know, or a whole lot more crowded, and what's that rule?
Sorry, but just the statute 366.1 says the tuition charge for a student can't exceed the amount per pupil local funding.
Here you go.
So if it's 3,985, is that the most we can?
Well, in that funding agreement, we're paying for $6 million school in there too, it goes to the students. So I'd say we're not gonna be out of too far, I mean.
But that's something you need to look a little bit deeper into college before we vote on.
I mean, that's what the statute says, and other district policies, you know, for Duplin, for instance, says the same thing. The tuition shall be set each year before August 1st. And that, it's annually determined by the Board of Education, and it may not exceed the local per pupil allocation for current expenses provided by the Board of Commissioners, so. That's both what the statute and what other districts, policy say.
Well, I'd say let's vote on it with a phone call. I mean, let's go ahead and vote and pass it, pay for whatever our financial officer comes up with per pupil or as a policy. And just call in so we don't have to vote on it again. And just give us a phone call. So that's what I would suggest.
I'll work with Colin to draft the policy that was get a copy to you and then vote by phone.
So is this for next year?
No, start the next 9 weeks.
Is it August 1st?
Yeah, so the statute says that tuition required in the section shall be determined by local boards each August 1st prior to the beginning of the new school year. I don't know if we can start it for this school year.
We can't.
No, because it's passed today.
According to the plain language of the statute,
We passed today.
Is that the statute or the County?
that's the statute,
That's a state statute.
115C 366.1.
So monetarily, where were we at on August 1st?
What do you mean?
We charged like 3, so.
They say we can't make it retroactive, so we can't charge them anything going forward, but that.
But I want to know what.
But there again, we voted to accept these kids in our state, we're supposed to have a vote to take these out of county kids. We hadn't voted on anybody coming in. For us to take them, the Craven County or whoever they're coming from has got to release them, and then we're supposed to vote on them. I don't remember voting on a single child.
Is that a board issue? Does that come to the board or?
It's supposed to be. Because we've had, look how many people we've had turned down because they had to come back, or they didn't want them. Same way that, you know, that when Lord sent some across the thing, sent them back to us, and
Are these students currently enrolled in the school system or no? Do we have that kind of?
Some of them are. However, some of them have just moved to the county, so they're in the county now.
Right.
And you have mainly that's occurring at, Maysville and Policy. We've had some.
But we couldn't change theirs, no way it was time, we can still vote on, but next year, according to the statutes, but we couldn't vote this year, where it stay the same, remain the same.
Right, according to what
According to
Bob
what
said, and then also what we would have to do is also what we'd have to do is we need to make sure that we look back and some of those students would need to be grandfathered in.
Yeah, that's same, that's here. It's already in.
Well, some of us been going here, I mean, in Maysville for forever, but the ones we're getting that, because the parents don't want to be at their house. That's a different situation.
Yeah, and, you know, looking at numbers, they're actually not as, and Leslie can speak to this as far as numbers, but they're not actually as high as we probably once thought they were as far as transfers coming in.
So your policy does delegate to superintendent or a designee the responsibility to approve or deny requests for admission to the school system for folks that aren't domiciled here. So it doesn't have to go to the board for each individual person.
That's our local policy.
That's your local policy. It does delegate that.
So what's the amount now?
The amount now is zero. But if you want a policy that we can draft a policy that we charge whatever the local PPA is, which would be about $385.
Yeah, and that will fluctuate based on the current agreement that we have with the county, because each year we get a little bit more money, so that price will change.
Colin, we can enact that now and be within the guidelines. That, it still goes back to August 1st?
So the statute says the tuition required, so the name of the statute is Local Boards of Education tuition charges. It sets out the requirements for when you can charge tuition. It says, section B says the tuition charge for a student shall not exceed the amount per pupil local funding. Section C says the tuition required in the section shall be determined by local boards each August 1st prior to the beginning of a new school year.
So did we have, what I'm asking is,
So
did
we
we
didn't
have anything in place?
There's nothing in place in terms of there's
Just no amount.
for no amount prior to August
That's what I'm
1st.
trying to-
And we've never had, we were always welcoming anybody that came because we were so small.
Yeah.
But this is a little different situation this year, if they're coming here for us to babysit.
Can we not say that we hinge on the general statutes? And that's what we run on?
What do you mean? I mean,
Like, it's written in there that we can go by the local.
right.
So can we not say that that's how we operate, we're using that?
But
we
we adopted a policy by the school board association, it should be addressed in that policy, something, in that policy means something, as big as it is it not? We're generalized, and then we go back and try to critique it to what fits us, but, I mean, general, it should be there somewhere.
We gotta go back and revise.
There's not any policy that I see on tuition. There's a policy on discretionary admissions, but the board has previously not set a tuition requirement for discretionary admission.
So basically, we got to go on what is already down to all.
It doesn't sound like we can do anything for this year anyway, so it's kind of a new point, we need to see how, the board needs to revisit maybe next spring or whatever. To try to figure out what we gotta do by August 1st, so we can figure out what we're gonna do, because the pandemic may be everywhere after November 3rd.
So we just bring this back up, so in the new, beginning of the new year, February, March, next year. And we'll revisit.
I'm still talking.
Can we say that?
At one point, we thought there was about 25 students that came in, but our actual ADM numbers have declined. We were at 996.
So we might have got some students that transferred in, but we also lost some students. So we're actually lower than what we were at this point last year, correct?
And each student also, towards our ADM, we receive roughly a little over $9,000 between state and federal dollars. So one thing we gotta be cautious of is we don't want people to leave because those students are worth quite a bit of money when you start stacking them together.
Same thing.
And we fund some positions for our federal monies. So that's just something we would want, probably revisit, like you said, this spring.
Did the federal side hold us harmless on ADM? They did not. I mean, as far as the money, because the state, we're held harmless, correct?
Right.
But on the federal, we're not, is that correct? Or did the federal do concessions?
Federal's not involved in it.
Federal's not,
So it doesn't, ADM doesn't matter on the federal?
well, it does per pupil, but right now, they haven't done anything. They haven't, I said they don't hold on. It's just whatever your numbers are right now, what they are, that's what you need that dollar figure for.
So we're not being held harmless from last year.
We just.
Then we might be better off just letting, we're gonna have to stay here anyway, so it don't matter.
So, February. Okay. All PLS update, first reading.
Good evening. And you will have in your packet, you should have in your packet, PLS fall updates. It's approximately 9 pages. This is the first reading tonight. There are 45 policies in this update. This includes 25 policies with major changes and updates and 20 with only minor changes, many of which are needed solely to update the policy titles to be consistent with our updated policies on discrimination, harassment, sexual harassment, and bullying. None of these policies have implementation deadlines, though several address pandemic-related practices that schools should already have in effect. I have provided for you, there's actually 2 sets, and you'll see it in there. It divides it off. Set 1 includes all the policies with significant, substantial changes, and the policies with only minor changes are in the second set. You'll be able to see the divide there. I will tell you that the affected policies deal with school safety, school calendar and time for learning, attendance, visitors to schools, community use of facilities, safety and student transportation services, and leave. And again, there are also some Title IX, which has become a huge topic. Dr. Thigpen had a meeting last week, some professional development. They spoke concerning that, and so we have to have a team together and some new training for Title IX in regards to policy changes. And then, like I also mentioned, there are several that deal with COVID-19. Just added some new verbiage in there for that. And again, this is the first reading. I'd like to get it approved at the November 4 meeting.
Have we got any service animals in the county and the school system?
No. We had a situation in the past where I believe that we made a policy change or updated a policy because of that. But I'm not sure that the child even attended to the best of my knowledge.
You need us to vote.
No, we do not need to vote on this tonight. However, if,
You ready next meeting?
yes, if we could, I would like to get, if it's okay, Colin, if I jump ahead since I'm already on policies, to approve policy 4700. That deals with student records. Colin brought this to our attention last week, and we looked at our policy and made changes to that. That is actually on, it is not in that packet, it is on your computer. If that, you have got that one?
It's 40, and that is.
Yeah, 4700.
So we need to waive, you wanna waive the first reading and go ahead and adopt it?
This one right here, I want to go ahead and approve this one. This is in a separate, this is not even in the fall updates. This is a separate student records.
I'll make a motion to waive the first reading and adopt the policy code 4700 as presented by Mr. Lee.
And I want to, basically what this is dealing with is when we have Zoom meetings, there can be some FERPA issues with that. If students are talking about their grades or individual assignments that they have, and then they record them and show them later. There's been some discussions about that and being some FERPA issues in other districts. Specifically, if you can turn to Release of directory information. Disclosures of directory information may be made only to the categories of persons or organizations and the purposes set out below. We did make a change and added a section D. The board further designates the following information as directory information that may be disclosed upon request exclusively to other students enrolled in the same online/virtual class who ask to review an audio or video recording of a particular online virtual class session for instructional purposes. Named to the extent it is referenced during the audio or video recording. Any photograph or pictorial representation of the student used in the online virtual class session. So it does add that, and then it shifts the other sections down. Colin,
Yeah,
anything you
so the
want to add
long and
there?
short of it is that this changes the directory information policy so that we can post the pre-recorded Zoom sessions so students can access them later. So if a student misses the Zoom session, wants to go back and look at it, this way we can post it there, and it's legal for us to do that because we're classifying it as directory information. If a student says that they don't want or parent says they don't want their student's image or name to be listed, then they have the choice to opt out, and we'd have to address that on a case-by-case basis. But unless somebody opts out, we're good to go ahead and post the videos. It's good for kids so that if you miss class, you can go back and watch it later.
My motion still stands.
Okay, so Dylan made the motion, and we have a second on it.
And that's the only change in it, what you just mentioned, Chris? I'll second it.
Larry, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you.
All right. Baseball field update.
I apologize for asking, doing so late. I know brothers probably inquiring, but all I have is nothing for you. Analyst engineering, I spoke with Joe this morning. And actually, I'm just going to send the plans off, go let take a look at them. Right now, he's about 90% complete with the drawings. One thing we're missing are sketches and some electrical that's got to be added in on these drawings itself. And like everyone else, COVID is kind of affected and also slowed him down. A couple of engineers he had doing special sketches, was doing work remote from home. So it's kind of slowed him down in progress of getting his plans in place. Hopefully we're closing in. I got 37 pages here. If you'd like to take a look at it. I also have it in PDF. I can send it to you if you like. I just received it earlier, so I'll get that out in PDF. If you'd like to take a look at that. And try to answer any questions you may have about it. If you do, I just hate for you to be out there in public asking questions about the ball field and you have to, I don't know, just on later. But we are moving forward on it. We're coming to get that ready for me to take a full committee and have them sit down and look at it. I think probably the final of what we talked about before. And everybody agrees on bringing vehicle approval and we'll try to move forward with submitting bids and getting the process underway. Does anybody have any questions or anything like to ask me about this? Not about the ball field or anything else as far as maintenance is concerned.
How about the lighting stuff? Have you followed up any of that on the old fields?
Well, here's what I've done so far. Remember, we moved that back to 3 phases, phase 2 in the lighting. And I didn't bring this before the board because I've been working on something with Duke Energy on the side. Part of that program is Duke Energy will supplement the cost of lighting those existing ball fields for the program they have, along with relighting the schools with the LED program. And the way we pay for that funding is they take the current power usage at the schools today. Over a 7-year period, it's a buyback off of that. So the savings, once the LED installation is done, then the savings over a 7-year period pay for the program, so it's not upfront cost to us. That's the way the program is supposed to work. Part of that program is they'll assist with the lighting of the ball field. And I met with their engineer out there a couple of weeks ago, and what we talked about doing was taking the existing ball fields, and we can use those poles that are in place now, which is the water savings. The candle power, the candles, which those ball fields are measured at right now, 50 is what's required. They're at 30. The football field is the same, 50 is required, it's at 30. So what he proposed to me doing was leaving those poles in place, and part of his concern was that those poles support new LED lighting, and they will. Then what we're gonna do is use those existing poles, bring the light up to 50 candles on those fields, erect 2 more poles on the football field. Those poles that are sitting there now will handle the weight of the LED lighting, just not enough there to supply enough light and bring up to 50 candles. The football field's at 30 candles now. So by adding 2 poles there, the same thing, 9-foot poles, add additional light to the center, that'll get our football field up where it needs to be. Now, when we talk about the track and the tennis court, that's a whole new animal altogether. And this concerns me about the track field and the tennis courts, is those are creosote poles. The lifespan on the creosote poles is about 30 to 35 years, or probably half the lifespan on those poles. The second thing that concerns me about those poles is they don't have a height limit. The third thing is we're nowhere near the candle we need. And the fourth thing is the wiring that was run to that is not sufficient to carry what we need to put back in place. So what I suggested in doing is working a price both ways. Give me a price on the re-outfitting existing poles that are there, and give me a price on new installation, with the exception of the electrical system. And what we agreed to do is bring everything up to 48277. I'll have to go there and build a new service, probably 1200 48277 service on site someplace. That'll be done internal to take care of the lighting that's going to be installed in the field. So it'll take most of that cost back off of us, and we'll just do that in-house as far as that. And the new lighting on these fields will go from 122.8 to 482.77, which will give us a lot better lighting and a lot lower power bill. If that makes sense to you folks. But that's where I'm at on that. Nothing's in concrete. I'm still discussing it with these folks. I told them once they got prices together, we'd sit down and look at it. If we present it to y'all have to make a final decision on that, whether we move forward or not with this program. But that's what I've been working on kind of behind the scenes on the existing fields.
Will your license cover most of the electrical work?
Would that include now, as we've talked about before, in front of the existing new gym? The old new gym.
High school, yeah, the high school.
The high school.
Sky gym.
Because that is dark out front.
Here's what I looked at last week. I'm trying to decide 2 different ways to do this. I priced putting those existing poles like we got, that are pretty poles out there. By the time I buy that light and put these poles in place, it'll run us about $12,000 to $14,000 a piece. Poles are expensive. Now, for about $400, they make a flood lamp that I can mount up high on the gym itself and cast out over. I would like to try that before I put those lights in place. I think it'll light it up. From what I've looked at, there are about 400 candles. And I think for probably less than $1,000, I can light that area, and I think you'll be pleased with it. If you're not, we haven't wasted $30,000. We just wasted about $1,000.
Well, you might can take a combination of the two if you don't, because you already had that out, and you need to light close to the highway, you can come up with a pole or two, maybe.
Yeah, I've put those floodlights like I'm talking about putting in place, and I've actually 2 of them light up about a 10-acre field. So, if you get them high enough, you're not going to be able to read the newspaper out there, because you're certainly be able to see the wall. And that's what I'd like to do. That's what I plan on doing, because it's going to be so costly to put the others in place.
We need it bright enough that they can find their ticket money in their wallet.
Probably you put on the back of the gym too.
We can.
They're
not so expensive.
Yeah, it would be a whole lot, from a safety issue, it would be a whole lot better if we could light everything else.
And the second thing we're dealing with too, and I'm going to look into maybe changing some of that over there. All that lighting is motion sensor. So any exterior light we got does not come on until somebody walks in and turn back out. So all those exterior poles we got, unless somebody walks by and trips them on, you're not gonna get your light off. I think that's another thing that creates such a dark area. So I was looking at maybe bypassing that section over there on those motion sensors and putting those on photo cells. Possibly I could do that at the light itself. So all this stuff we've kind of been looking into, what's the most cost and advantageous for us to do. I'm gonna go that route if you're not pleased with that, then we'll go that route.
I would like to see it before this season. If possible.
You'll see it unless something else happens.
Yeah.
Hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Yeah. But that's, every time I plan to do something, I kind of get ready.
2020.
Are we having any issues with the new school now that you're having to cover, like, different than what you were?
Well, I did meet with, James Rice and Jerry Marshall 2 weeks ago. We still have about 25 items that exist off the contractor punch list, which Graham Wood actually developed that list. One of those things has to do with some doors in the building. It's been an issue since we moved in the building. Rooms 404, 505, 506. It's the office areas on wings is what that is. To begin with, there were no doors. Then they installed 2 wrong doors. Then they come back, took those doors out, and we were out of doors again. Then they come back and reinstalled 3 aluminum doors. Those doors didn't have the correct hinges on them, so I had to come back and cut in hinges on those, so we got the doors in place. Then they come back and installed the door hardware on those doors, and they installed 2 of those doors. The hardware is installed backwards, so that it released from the outside instead of the inside. Then one never got any hardware, and then the hardware that was installed should have been sledge hardware, is what was spec with submittals. That's what I have cylinders for, that's what we're keyed for. They installed best hardware. So we got the wrong hardware on the doors that are now. Last week I met with James Ross, and we discussed that. He's at the point now, he said he's gonna go to an outside source to get his punch list items correct. I spoke with him again this morning. He was supposed to send me an email back today. That's one of those issues. They are working on it, but they are struggling. So if something, and we've got some issues with some lights and freezers. Luckily, they reinstalled the cameras that were out on the front of the school that were installed incorrectly, and they filled up with water. So that was corrected last week. So they are working on some of those items, but there's still issues that do exist. That hopefully will work towards completing. But I did sit down last week, and James and Jerry and I went over the agreement. And the agreement states, after 1 year, most of that school is going to fall back on me as far as taking care of it. The only thing that they're really going to take care of at this point on is the HVAC system. They'll monitor that, and it's under warranty for the next. Well, we got Brandon a contract for 3 years, which goes up to 7 years. The lighting system is another, which controlled remotely out of Canada, and they'll still monitor that system. So we've had some issues with the lighting system. Luckily, that'd be corrected. I done some resets, and we got that back online, and it's updated. But those are 2 of the only main systems that really we're not going to be responsible for. As far as school maintenance now, that's my problem.
But
That wasn't.
part of it had to be fixed, huh?
Well, they're working on the punch list. I mean, that's.
Well, the punch list, they say on a yield, but have they done what they supposed to have done on the time amount in that yield? I don't think so. Because we've been on them from day one.
And we didn't even find out about it till like you said last year. That really was an issue, because you were doing it, nobody really knew.
But there is a clause in that agreement that states anything that's overlooked, that was in the original plans, that should have been installed, they are still responsible for 7 years. So if we go in there and say they were supposed to install a circuit that didn't install, but it was in plans, then they're responsible for making it happen for 7 years.
You're going to pay attorney fees to get them to do it.
I'd rather not pay attorney fees as long as they're doing some I mean, this is the beginning. This isn't special. I mean, once you accept the bill is not completed and the money's off of it, it's an uphill battle. I mean, that's just the way it's, Myron can tell you that. But once the money's off a building, you're done. And that's just the predicament we're in. Now, they're slowly but surely working to correct these problems, but it is a slow process. It's gotten so slow, some of them I've taken over and just doing myself to get out of the way.
How about the heat, Tim? Well, we ain't used it much yet, but it's coming, we're gonna need heat. The heat, if it's bad in the air conditioning unit, they're gonna freeze to death, they're gonna burn to death.
Well, you gotta understand how, well, we go back and explain this whole deal. That system's set up to try to save money. My understanding after meeting with folks last week, they kind of made a mistake when they designed, well, with the bringing on of the building, maybe I should say. Anyway, they're telling me it's costing them about $4,000 a month to run that building power bill. And reason being, when they agreed to pay the power bill on that building, they actually had to make a deal with Duke Energy. And part of that agreement was with Duke Energy contract is they would pay whatever the full demand was for a 12-month period. Well, when you pay for three-phase power, it pays for part of that on demand. So you got to understand that sets the money. Your demand sets the money. When they brought that building online, instead of bringing it online slowly, one section at a time, somebody threw the switch. They brought that whole building on one time, which pushed that demand way up here. So no matter how much money they save, they're still paying that demand. So they're saying it's costing them about $4,000 a month to run that building. And my experience has been, what I'm understanding, go out there looking at these systems, if the sun's not shining, most of the time the heat system's not running. Because they're using as much of that energy as they can to run the building itself. So the perimeters are set up on the building, wintertime, summertime, perimeters, occupied, unoccupied. And those temperatures in the wintertime are 68, and then it drops back from that. In the summertime, 73, and it can go up from that, depending on if the building's occupied or unoccupied, the room's unoccupied. It's just the way that system is designed to operate. So as long as they're paying for energy on that building, we're probably not going to get that 70 degrees straight through all the time. And that's kind of where we're at in the heating system. Most of the issues that operate and run that system have been straightened out. Things like saying that I've only reset it a couple of times in the last month. And then we figured out what that was as well. I said, knock on wood. You know, I didn't say anything. The thing about that system out there is it's an asset. There's not another one like it in the world. It was designed by Brady. And they'll tell you there is, but there's not. If you talk that it was built specifically for that building, designed for that building, they use compressors over well water and chills and cools. And it's really a complicated system. It can utilize that on a day like today. You'll probably use mostly outside here to cool, because if the outside atmosphere temperature is good and we don't have a lot of humidity, then it kicks in to bring outside air. So it has the ability for that. But the system, it's a complicated system to say the least. But it's been operating.
Did you say they were paying about $4,000 a month difference in electricity bill?
That's what they were telling me. That's what Jerry Rice told me last week.
When we made the agreement, LGC approved us, we were supposed to send them, they told us we were supposed to send them a yearly thing, because that was one of the selling points. We don't own the building, so I don't know how we didn't own the electrical bill.
No.
That was one of the stipulations when we got approved.
Well, one of the things, it's not that the building doesn't generate, because there's 2,700 solar panels on top of that building. If you look at the solar field like out here, that's what's on top of the building. If you're out there looking at it, please, I'd love to take you up there, because there's some
2,777 blocks too, then, I reckon.
No, there's 8,700 blocks. But it's not that the building's not generating power. It's the way the building was brought online and created, and the way the contract was negotiated is what's caused. Now, once that year's up, I'm sure that you'll see a difference in that. But they're so funny over that PV part of that building. under that contract, you can't even plant a tree in that yard. If you plant a tree that's gonna shade that, then that's an issue that can happen. So you gotta get approval of anything like that. So that PV side of that building, they control very closely. But, and really for us, it's not gonna affect us either way. I hate to have to do that. But nevertheless, that's why they just don't need the conversation. And the reason being is because they're paying for such a demand in the negotiated contract. So that's one of the reasons he's trying to hold up power.
Sounds like a nightmare to me.
So maybe it's not gonna have just make it sound. You have to understand that is a very technical building. It operates off of remote Wi-Fi sensors, heat sensors, light sensors, occupancy sensors. And the downside of that, at some point in time, you'll have to maintain contracts to keep these folks in place and run that building. That's the downside of that building. Is you'll have to keep these contractors on retainer once we take control of that building, just to maintain and control and run that building.
So all of us need to not be, in about 6 years, don't need to plan to be on school board, right?
By all means, I want everyone here to continue to run. Please, please.
A nightmare for
I
whoever.
love everyone. I'll do anything I can to help, but please outlast me.
So you don't think once it becomes ours after lease that we can hire or keep people here for it to be self-sufficient?
I'm not saying we couldn't do that. I'm saying I don't know that you can hire those people.
I don't know whether you.
Everything's back to money.
They might be willing
Yeah,
to carry that piece.
It's a very technical.
Only people knows how to do it is them.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be different 7 years.
Job security.
Oh, God, maybe if we
I
spend
think
$100
our
million, we could do
computer
that.
program may be obsolete in 7 years, maybe easy to fix.
There's some other concerns we got, and I think a lot of what we have out there is training issues as well. We've had some issues with the cameras out there, hopefully that'll fall back on training, and we're scheduled to meet Thursday to do that. So if you're hearing some wrong about we can't get picture, a lot of that has to do with the way the cameras are configured. And we'll just need to do some more training. If that's not the case, then we'll revert back to that section of that contract that's not installed right and move forward from there. But right now, I'd like to keep calling Alex as much as I can because he's very expensive.
Nah, you don't mind me.
I'm sorry I asked a question, so just forget it.
You'll be needing a salary increase to afford the mailbox. It's gonna take to keep you alive.
Well,
God almighty.
Any more questions to Tim?
No, I've asked one too many.
thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, bud.
All right. We're gonna take that, everybody take
Where
a
you going
second,
with that?
everybody take a second to digest
Maybe
everything.
intermission
Action items. Approval plan A, return to school for K through 5.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, since the governor's announcement that K-5 can return to the building, we've reviewed at the central office of logistics for transportation, sanitation, distancing, discussed it with our principals and had our principals discuss it with their school leadership teams. And so after looking at that and given the low number of students we've had issues with, we want to recommend to you that we return our K-5 students to the building on October the 26th, which is the beginning of the next 9-week grade period. We want to emphasize that we will continue to scan temperatures, take temperatures, and do social distancing. We think for the most part we'll be able to maintain it in our classrooms. And we're here to answer any questions about that return that you have. We still want to, when we do return, keep Wednesdays as a remote day until after Thanksgiving before we came back to just for 4 days until sometime after Thanksgiving before we move to a 5-day week. So any questions that you have?
Do you have a plan if they go into, if we start having problems with any kind of sickness?
Yes, so, you know, I mean, you know, there's definite protocols if we get a cluster or anything like that, contact tracing, and we're gonna back if we have any issues whatsoever.
So what's the proposal for the return date for K-5?
October 26th.
And
And that's 4 days, that's two, 1, and 2, right? So you're saying through Thanksgiving, you're not gonna do it through the whole 9 weeks, you're just gonna do it, is that like halfway through the 9 weeks?
Well, we talked about possibly doing it all the way until after Christmas.
Yeah, just,
into something else.
But
just looking at it after, we return, because after we return from Thanksgiving, you're only talking about 2.5 weeks until you got Christmas. And then within that, we're also gonna look at, obviously, our 7-12 will remain in Plan B. However, Danielle is working on getting some of our EC students in grades 7-12, because we've heard that loud and clear. Top priority students that really need the intensive support, they would be attending 4 days a week instead of the cohort A and B in those grades 7-12. And we'd also like to bring, if possible, pre-K on board with that as well. Because Bryce and I had a conversation with Dr. Thigpen. If we don't offer that, and we could lose pre-K students. And if we lose pre-K students, then the following year, we're losing them in kindergarten.
You're talking about the EC in on 26.
Yes. Now, it would not be all of our EC 7-12, probably it would be selected. Danielle would make that decision with her team. And then obviously, I think transportation becomes an issue that we're gonna work real closely with Wendy with, and we're all gonna support her. And just because of the simple fact of it's a little unique situation we have with our schools, is we're a pre-K through 6 at our elementaries. 6th grade will remain in D. We could not get that changed. They were very adamant. Dr. Thigpen, he talked with some people. I talked with some other people in the state, and they said no, they were very adamant. As well as if you have 6th graders or above on the school bus, it reverts to Plan B for transportation, which limits the number. But we do feel like with the number of 6th graders that we have at the schools, especially at Comfort, Maysville and Pollocksville, we feel comfortable that we'll still be able to get them on the buses and still meet those requirements.
So with the new plan, they're done transportation to match that. So I'm guessing they've opened it up bus-wise to where you're not restricted unless you go over to 5th grade.
Well, since we have 6th graders that attend our elementary schools, we'll have to be in Plan B on the transportation, which is 24 students on a 72 passenger bus, unless siblings sit together, and 22 on a 66 passenger bus. Obviously, you still have to wear a mask. We'll still check temperatures. If we saw that there was an issue, just say for instance at Trenton, we may have to do a different type of route for those 6th grade students because they do have more students than.
So the bus route, the buses remain the same.
Yes, as far
No
as
matter
there may be a few more students on the bus, because on some of our buses right now, we may only have 10 to 12 students. So we're going to try to max that out. If the parents say we want to go to Plan A, and we don't want to stay virtual. I think 37% of our student population right now is virtual, and about 53% at the high school is virtual. So we feel like we already know that's going to change.
How many elementary schools across the state have 6th grade in them, percentage-wise compared to? I mean, is it a norm, and most of us go to 5th grade in elementary?
More if you have more K-8. K-8's pretty much more the norm, and that we're traditional 9-12. K-6 is not typically done. I think, in the past, I believe, it was kind of
Well,
positions
done
and
just
numbers.
K-5 then. I mean, that's gonna throw a monkey wrench in just about every school district across the state.
K-8, it definitely will.
Well, I mean, in K-6, basically, I mean,
Same thing.
yeah, and it's just a little bit smaller percentage, it's still through.
Our low numbers, we feel like will help us with
Most
this.
larger districts, you know, in County, like you would have a K 2, 3, 5.
You know, like for instance,
But the rural counties are, I mean, they're,
Greene County, they have a K1, a 2, 3, a 4, 5. So they, you know, they've got a,
That's money, you know, running out.
maybe that's why the scores are so low.
Do you foresee us having to add any buses as a result of this?
with, Plan B right now, we actually have, some buses that are not actually on routes.
Right.
So we may have, to add some more buses, but it would be like we would typically do when school was in session full time. We have 22 buses. And so I feel like if we max that out, we've got enough bus drivers, but when it comes to sub bus drivers, that's when we, so if we had to do a double route, that may be something that we'd have to look at. But there's a bus shortage now everywhere, especially if you think about, districts that were in Plan C only, and they had to lay off, their bus drivers. The bus drivers might not come back, and because, you know, that's always the issues, but we feel pretty good about that right now. So the principals, we want to get it approved tonight, and then the principals are going to have their teachers. They've got a spreadsheet. They'll be contacting the parents, and they'll be asking them some questions, whether they want to be virtual, continue with virtual, or go to Plan A, because we have heard from some parents that they like Plan B, but they don't want to go to 4 days a week. So our choice is you A or virtual. We're not going to do an A, B, and a virtual. It's just too much for our teachers. We don't feel like that's good for them.
And another part of this is the virtual learning contract. We, you know, we asked them to sign that for 9 weeks. We'll ask them to sign it again, so if they choose to be virtual, they may their 9 weeks process.
Russ, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, just simply, it's great protection for us as a county, in securing our transportation and in preparation as well. I've been contacted by Pender and Sampson, wanting a copy of our learning contracts from early, this fall, because the situation their board has run into is they didn't have a universal learning contract for virtual or remote learning. Parents wanted to change their mind either way, and the board couldn't hold it to it. So you had Jimmy doing one thing and Johnny doing another. It created a big problem in some of our counties. So we just asked for some uniformity as far as the learning contracts go.
Y'all sit with Samson,
No, not Samson.
and they don't sit with Pender. Same person sits with both ends.
I don't know. I know that Rich sits with Pender, I don't know about Samson.
I'll make a motion to approve the contract as presented.
The motion is made and been approved.
I mean, the Plan A, and the contract.
Return to schools for the K through 5. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Unanimous. Okay,
Way to work, y'all.
policy update.
We just did that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Okay, approved now. We're going to the budget. All right, 2021 budget.
Good evening. Tonight, I'm presenting the budget resolution for the 2021 year. I'm sure Ron brought each of you a copy. If you look at, the state and federal funds are based off the initial allotments from state and federal departments. I do want to draw your attention to the capital outlay because there are some new items up there that you probably haven't seen before in a budget resolution. The first one is for the debt service payment for the buses. So we retained 2 buses last year through DPI. They are funded through DPI. Due to COVID, we were not able to pick up the buses until, mid-September. Wendy and her team went and got those buses. So after speaking with the auditors, they informed us that we needed to put the debt service payment in this year's budget as well, because we were not eligible to pick up those buses until this fiscal school year. So that's something new. That funding does come from DPI though. The next one is the fund balance for the 1.4 million. That is your ball field project. Okay, so when you look at that, just make sure that's the funding we have allocated so far for the ball fields. The county lease payment, that is new. After talking with our auditors this year, and looking at the agreement between the county and the board, they suggested that we put the county lease payment, that was listed in that agreement, in our budget resolution for the year and ongoing until, that agreement is complete. Any questions?
School buses are expensive on
Yes,
The Commissioner just got three new ones.
she's gotten,
Yeah, we just got 3 new ones a couple of weeks ago, so our
our
fleet is really up to date. They did a good job with the mileage for them, manipulating routes, so.
Yeah.
Do we need to approve that?
Yes.
All right, need a motion.
I'm moving that we approve the budget resolution.
So, Aaron Benton, all in favor? All opposed, unanimous?
Thank
Is
you.
the national sales tax smaller than what it normally is?
Our house and sales tax.
Yeah.
So this for the house and sales tax is based off our capital, planning, capital project planning for the fiscal year. So our fund balance still sits over there at the county level, but me and Tim, after getting together, discussed what our plans for the capital needs for this school year, that's what we planned for, is that amount.
Okay.
Superintendent's comment.
I just want to spread to you, to keep up with our COVID dashboard, see where our cases are. We want a big thank you to our principals and teachers, our maintenance staff, and our bus drivers. Everybody's done a really good job, because if you look at our numbers, where the kids have been stayed the same. And I think because we did a great job with the sanitation efforts, with the distancing, you know, not been my classroom yet, not seeing masks going on, kids and teachers doing a great job. So I just want to thank them publicly and let you know that they're doing a really good job. And I look forward to having our kids in the building. You know, we've given our kids face-to-face learning for several weeks. So we're grateful and thankful that we've been able to do so. So, thank you, Bill.
You must be doing something right, we're not getting phone calls. Not about that anyway.
Public comments. Any public comments, Dave? Let's see. Okay, but I guess we'll go into executive session. All right, and of course, with general statute 143-318, well, we'll go into, we have to talk, motion go into executive session. Have a motion?
So moved.
Billy? Second? Alan? All in favor? Unanimous? All right, we're going into executive session.